Welcome back. You're watching Politically Correct with me, Maya Hayakawa. If you've just joined us today, I have a very special and very brave guest with me today. I have Teresa Njoroge, who has come here on today's show to share her story on her journey and life in prison, and also life after prison as well. And right before the break, she was basically describing to us what her life was like before she had been accused of a bank fraud. And now I want to get into, in terms of her life in prison, what it was like during that time. And thank you so much for coming back. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
And right before the break, you had said during the court proceedings and processing time, of which you so luckily did not have to spend in the remand prison, and you still had, you know, your freedom and life going on. And during that time, you found love. Yes. And you got married.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, what was that conversation like? You meet a gentleman and you like this guy, you go for a couple of dates, and here you are battling this court case, and you've been, you know, accused of a serious crime. How did you bring that up in the conversation? Or was he there right from the start, from the beginning?
Actually, he met me while I was going through the court case, and so he already knew that I was going through this court case. Mm-hmm. He knew the allegations that I was up against, theft, and conspiracy to defraud my employer, the bank. And I found it rather extraordinary that he chose to stick with me while everyone else was fleeing, you know, because there was a question here. Are you a thief? Really? Are the allegations that you're up against true, that you defrauded your employer? So my integrity was at question here. The fact that he chose to stand by me and always be there with me when I'm going to the court cases, I found that extraordinary, and that made my heart, you know, like open up to the fact that there was someone here who was really believing in me and comforting me and just giving me the strength to go on. Because my family, my parents and my siblings, who we were very close with and working together with, were also going through that emotional pain of our firstborn daughter is now in the courts, no longer working, and my siblings, some had to even drop out of school because now I wouldn't be able to support them anymore to finish their higher learning. So for a friend to come by and stand by me, that was quite something, you know, even for the family.
How did that affect your relationship, though? Your relationship with him, your relationship with your family, your siblings, your parents, your friends? How did it affect it?
Most of my friends couldn't hold up, you know, with what was going on because they had to go on with their lives. And a few stuck on to help me continue with the journey. And it actually brought our family even closer because all fingers were now pointing at us, you know, because even for my parents, you know, for them now it was their daughter. Did you see her on TV? She was even in the newspapers. She's a bank thief, you know. And for my siblings, it was, how do we adjust to this? For the ones who had to drop out of school, what will happen, you know? And besides that, for our bigger sister, what now? What next? You know, these courts, every time we go to court, it's adjourned, you know. Do we bribe or, I mean, how do we go about this criminal justice system? You know, it was very, very, very tough. But one thing we all agreed on was that we're not going to bribe anyone. We're going to go through this clean, you know. It wasn't easy. It really wasn't easy for either one of us. But we went through the 2 years and 2 months, only to come and learn that now it even gets tougher because I've been convicted, you know. So adjusting now to their daughter and their big sister, and for my husband, his wife and new mother, to be behind bars now, you know. So it was a heavy slap.
And at the end of that 2 years and 2 months, when you're in that court room, and the judge passed the sentencing, and he passed the sentencing of, he at the time it was 4 years, correct?
Yeah.
What's the first thing that ran through your mind?
Just to correct you a bit, because now they had cleared me of the 3 counts of theft, and now I have just been left with conspiracy. At that point, the judge ruled that I would serve a year.
Oh, a year, okay.
Because the 3 charges of theft have been dropped.
Oh, okay, okay.
So for the conspiracy, I'll go in for a year. Now, what next? How do I adjust now to going into prison? We didn't have much time because my prison sentence starts at that time. At that moment. And quick decisions had to be made. And we've just been blessed with a firstborn daughter. And
how old was she at the time?
She was only 3 months old.
3 months old, okay.
And now this is the only person who I can have with me while I'm serving the sentence. So while everyone else has to go back home, at least I can go with my daughter. And that's all that I had at that particular time, because I lost literally everything. Everything that I had ever worked for, my reputation, literally everything had gone. And for me, going with my daughter into prison would give me some hope, would give me some, you know, the despair would go, because I had someone whom I loved and cared for, whom I would wake up with. So when we were told that I had that option to go with her, especially because she was still nursing, we took it up. Yeah.
And of course, you know, for the audience and our viewers that are watching right now, this might be information that they do not know of. So female prisoners are actually allowed to have their children until the age of 5, I think it is, right? And they have the option of staying with the mother in prison.
Yes.
And now, in terms of life in prison, what is that environment like? What is the atmosphere like? What was life in prison like? What were you doing every single day? What was your daily activity and schedule like?
Prison life is very, very tough, because you have people from all walks of life now put together in a correctional facility, and you do not have access to most of the things that you'd ordinarily have outside. And the warders have one aim: to see to it that you get reformed and you do your time, you know, in a civil manner. Because there's some who will be very harsh and very cruel, the inmates, and there's some who are softer. Then of course there are those who went through the court system and there was miscarriage of justice, so they're innocent. So all these people put together, the warders have to make sure that they live together soberly, and then rehabilitate them and reform them. And then for the inmates, it's when will I ever get out of this place, you know, and missing their families, a lot of despair and brokenness. But for the ones who have longer sentences, you just have to accept and find a way of adjusting to living this life of behind prison, behind bars. So for me, I actually got lucky going in with my 3-month-old daughter, because I was assigned to take care of the other children who were about 50. So that for me...
The other children of the other inmates?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So that for me actually made my sentence a bit more exciting, because I'd wake up to deal with the kids, you know, and bring life to these kids. So I wouldn't have time for self-pity or just think about what has just happened to me, but think more about these children who do not have any other option, who do not know any other life other than being here behind bars. And I know that there's much more to life than this. So my days passed pretty fast, taking care of the children and also learning of what changes need to be brought and how other people can come in and partner and assist with making the life of these children and the mothers who are behind bars, making their life a bit more lighter and easier.
And of course we're limited by time here, but then you and I had a discussion about this, and I learned so much in terms of the children and what they go through in life in prison. And for you were lucky enough to have the option to actually bring your child into prison. You had the option of I could leave her with my husband. I know that for many women, their children are rejected by their family members and so on and so forth. Is that correct in prison?
Yes. Most women actually go through a very difficult time, because for those who are leaving their grown-up kids, it's such a hard time leaving your parenting roles of these kids, and now you have to go into prison. And then there are those who have to come with their kids into prison because there's no one who they could leave this child with. So either way, it's
still tough.
It's very, very tough, because once the kid loses their mom, there's something that just happens right there, regardless of what age those kids were at. And most of them either turn to substance abuse, but the emotional trauma that those kids go through is very, very traumatizing for them. And then for the mothers who have to now go with their kids behind prisons, prisons were not created for these kids. So the environment is not child-friendly. The language that they're subjected to, seeing warders and wardresses all the time, it's a lose-lose situation either way when the mother leaves.
Whichever way
you
look at it, really.
It's very tough. But even more so for these kids who have to come behind bars. What they live with sticks with them for a lifetime. And, they really need to be taken care of lest they lapse into the criminality way of a lifestyle. Yeah.
And in terms of the visitation, how often are family members, friends allowed to visit the inmates?
By law, once a month. However, there are, exceptions where they'll allow them to visit more than once a month for that bond to keep on. And then once a year, there is the family kind of a reunion where the prisons allow the family members of the inmate to come and spend a whole day with the inmate. So the kids can come, the relatives can come in. But then again, and this is where the society fails, the prisons has allowed for this, but you find that the society, the relatives, the family members won't even come. But then sometimes it's even lack of bus fare, to come from wherever it is that they are at, because most of the population that's behind bars come from very, very poor backgrounds, very, very poor, such that for their relatives to even come, bus fare is an issue, let alone bringing them the basic necessities that they require. Yeah.
I keep coming across this theme, and this theme that I keep coming across is that imprisonment, being in prison, it's not just about physical loss of physical freedom. It's not just about the physical imprisonment, but what's even more torturous is actually that mental imprisonment, and that even behind bars, you can actually be a lot more free mentally, emotionally, psychologically than people who are walking outside bars, and have that physical freedom.
Yeah.
Is that something that you personally experienced for yourself, or is that something that you personally saw in the environment that you were in with the women that you were interacting with in prison?
For most of the women who are behind bars, having come from very harsh backgrounds, you know, whereby access to resources, capabilities and choices and simple things like food, just the basic necessities, having come from such hustle to prison, for most of them, it's actually a relief that for some time, I can actually break from the daily hustle that they have to go through just to put a plate of food on the table. And they can now, you know, reconcile.
Because you get your meals, you get your three,
exactly.
At least you're guaranteed to get your three
your
meals.
3 meals, you know, some water to take a shower and some place to sleep. For some, that is really a break from what they go through, where they're not assured of a meal, some place to take a shower, or even some place to sleep, you know. So for most of them, and yes, because they come from very harsh backgrounds, they have that time to reconcile their emotions and their thoughts and get free from all that hustle and bustle that's out there.
The lowest point in that 1 year, what was your lowest point?
My lowest point was seeing how my being behind bars had affected my family, and especially the blow that it had on my parents. You know, all the effort that they had put in to raise me up, give me a good education, support me even as I worked so hard to build my career, and then now come to visit me behind bars. You know, what went wrong? You know, that was my lowest point. And I thank God that after my release, we're still building my life back together, because we've gotten to that point of forgiving the people who masterminded the whole thing and planned it out, to a point of seeing the beauty that has come out of my being behind bars, you know, because from being behind bars, I came up with Clean Start, which gives a clean start to so many other women, you know, and seeing that beautiful thing sprout from it, it gives some comfort to my parents, to my siblings, and to myself, and to my husband as well, to see that some good came out of this.
A sense of purpose.
You know, came out of this. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And we need to take a quick break once again. Okay. And when we come back, more with Teresa, as she tells us a little bit more about her organization, which she founded, that assists women like her who have served time in prison, and assist them in the reintegration process going back into society. So when we come back, more with Teresa, when she tells us her story of how she managed to rebuild her life after prison, the integration process, and more about Clean Start. Keep it here, Politically Correct.